I keep thinking I have things figured out, and then I stumble on some other thing that makes me question everything all over again. I feel like I might as well just make this video and talk about the initial theories I had, especially since I've been procrastinating on this for an absurd length of time. Before I explain, I have a few things I want to go over first. First of all, thank you guys for being respectful in the comments. I've read most of them, and I think I do at least have answers to a few of the questions you guys have. Some clarification. When I mentioned reality shifting in the last video, I wasn't trying to imply that the phenomenon is literally astral projecting into a different universe, as opposed to a specific form of lucid dreaming. I know I wasn't really clear about that, and that it's not really my job whether or not you believe one thing or the other. I was just saying that the way that it's described by that community seems similar to what I experienced. The Keystone is not a spearhead or arrowhead, at the very least not an authentic one. It's not really the right shape to be effective, and it's also most likely a shale or slate, which isn't really good for that kind of tool. I did see one person suggest that it could have been made by someone in more recent times for fun, or like as a part of a masonry project, before it was lost or discarded. My evidence for it being an arrowhead is just, it isn't. Arrowheads need to be made of stronger materials like flint and obsidian, and this is not that kind of mineral. I also couldn't find any information about notched arrowheads being found outside of Africa or the Americas, and the notching in it is not the right kind of notch for an arrowhead or spearhead. A few people noticed that there's a little dark spot on the front of the Keystone. That is graphite. I know I drew on it at some point. I don't really remember when, but I know as a fact that I did draw on it at one point in pencil. So I can say that that little dark spot on the top in the middle was me doing stuff with it and not something that it came with. And I'm not going to give or sell the Keystone to anyone. The amount of people who asked me either in the comment sections or DMing me on random websites, I'm not going to sell it to anyone because I don't really want to be liable for handing it off to someone if it does have some sort of evil power. And if it doesn't have any powers, it's like kind of selling it to someone is like a scam almost. And to ship something, you'd have to send me your mailing address, and I don't really want anyone's personal information. You guys should be smart about that. I hope that's understandable. A few people went out and found their own triangular rocks, and one of them said that it worked for them, so cool. That's fine, but I'm not going to sell the stone to anyone. One thing I forgot to mention in the first video is that the Keystone seems to cause paresthesia, which in other words, it's that feeling you get when your arms or legs fall asleep, like that little tingly. I will go on more detail on that later in the video and go over some experiments I did, and a theory that I have. But what else did you guys mention? Let's see. My teacher is not, nor was, a Bill Cipher Kinney. I need to remind you guys that he became my teacher quite literally the day after Sock Opera came out. The only other episode Bill Cipher was in prior to that episode was Dreamscaperers. An adult man is not going to change his entire at-work personality to roleplay as a cartoon demon that had, at this point, only been seen in one episode. As for the name, Bill is a common name. So other than that, it's just like insane coincidence. That's like the only rational explanation for that incident with the teacher. And speaking of batshit insane coincidences, so this is something I was originally going to make a whole separate video on, but there's not really enough info on this that I have to really make a full entertaining video on this. When I was in college, I started watching YouTube videos to have some stuff going on in the background while I worked. One of the YouTubers whose videos I'd been listening to a lot at the time was Markiplier. You'll understand why this is relevant in a minute. I decided at some point that it was worth subscribing to him, and the day afterwards, he posted a video with my house in it. Turns out the man had a condo a few blocks away from my apartment. I'm not going to be specific about where this was for obvious reasons, but I'm pretty sure both of us have moved since then. I sort of assumed that him living so close to me meant that I'd run into him randomly at some point, so I made sure to put more effort into my YouTube channel around this time, because of some pipe dream that if I ever did run into him that we would collaborate or something. I never did run into him though, but I did see his van a couple of times. Anyways, the point of this is batshit insane coincidences. The only real logical explanation for either of these. One of you did compare me to Ford, and we're gonna get into that a bit more, but it reminded me that I do in fact have a genetic mutation that I discovered because of Gravity Falls. Remember that episode with the black lights? I decided to get a bunch of invisible ink pens when that came out, and I drew on my face around where my freckles were to replicate the Cassiopeia freckles that I mentioned before. When I went to see how it looked, this happened. I still don't have an explanation for this, but my guess is that it's more common than you'd think. Whatever it is, it doesn't really seem to affect my vision, even when my pupils are fluorescing. And I've had it for over 10 years at this point with no real change. It seems to be genetic. I think I tested the light on my parents and one of them had a similar effect. Judging from the depth, it does seem to be something with the lens of my eye rather than the retina. And while it resembles a cataract, I don't have any symptoms or any family history, and I can't really find any information about it online. Back to the Keystone. I mentioned earlier that the Keystone would give me paresthesia as well as lucid dreams. And again, paresthesia, for those who don't know, is basically that numb, tingly sensation you get when a part of your body falls asleep. I had sort of thought that this would be the easiest thing to debunk, the hypothesis here being that it was actually the position I was sleeping in causing the tingly feeling rather than the rock itself. I did have some paresthesia when laying down on my back without the Keystone, but it was only really noticeable because I was looking for it, whereas when I laid on my back with the Keystone on my head, the paresthesia would come on much faster and much more intensely. It did get to the point where doing these experiments was genuinely uncomfortable, so I kind of stopped doing them. And I didn't really actually get any lucid dreams while doing these tests. But the good thing is I'm not really as scared of the Keystone as I used to be, but I'm still kind of hesitant to do experiments with it. Then again, you guys gave me some experiment suggestions. One of you sent me a DM with like 70 classified CIA documents and suggested I try binaural beats. I'm not sure how useful the methodology in these experiments is going to actually be, but I know you wanted to be included in this. Surprisingly, nothing happened. I kind of wasn't really expecting that. I thought that the binaural frequencies would at least give me some sort of hypnagogic hallucination or give me more vivid lucid dreams, but I actually don't remember my dreams at all the night that I tried, and I didn't even get paresthesia when using the Keystone when I did the binaural beats. I'm admittedly a bit lazy, and I think I'm probably going to save these ones for another video if you guys are interested, just because I haven't really had time to do them and I kind of don't feel like doing them. But we'll see how it goes. Then there's this suggestion. My lease has a no setting things on fire policy, so we're gonna do this with birthday candles.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to whatever the fuck it is I'm doing. Happy birthday to you. Fuck. There, magic. Alright, so moment of truth. First of all, you guys were pointing out about this thing. This is graphite. I drew on this a while back. Should come off. It's not coming off. It is graphite, guys, I promise. It's not really coming off. Whatever, it's graphite, I promise. As for the other black stuff, you guys said to be careful, which I will. I'm gonna leave this side alone because most of the black stuff's under here anyway. So this tape has been on here for like a decade, so let's see. What's the best way to take this off? I feel like I'm scratching a rock a little bit. This tape's really stuck on here. That really didn't come off at all. Okay, oh, it does not want to come off. Please come off. Yeah, I'm just gonna turn the recording off because it's kind of hard to do this with one hand. So I'm just gonna turn the recording off and then come back when the tape is off. Baby, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I know. I'm sorry. Is that the black stuff there? I think it is. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh. Sorry. Oh, the poor little guy. I'm sorry. Okay, so that is the black stuff over there. There's actually not as much as I thought there would be. Can you get off my hand, please? Can you focus on the rock, please? Phone. Phone. Focus. Phone, please. I'm sorry. So there's still that stuff. That stuff didn't come off. But, let me go ahead and look closer at the black stuff in a minute. I'd like to apologize for the fact that I told everyone that I was gonna wear gloves and then I immediately took off the glove right after I stopped recording the first one. So, this is the black stuff. It's actually not as thick as I thought it would be. And we're gonna go ahead and look at this under a microscope. It still has tape all over it, so that's gonna be kind of hard to see it, I think, but let's see if this works. Let me just do this in the most awkward way possible, just to add some authenticity to it. What is that? Why is it like spirally? It's weird, actually. It's like, it's not a goo, it's like there's fibers to it. That's really gross, actually. Let me see if I can get more of this out. Okay, so this is just like really gross looking, actually. This is a very close up. This is not like the best microscope ever. This is like, I think only 30 times magnification. I can't fucking talk. That just looks gross. I don't think this really answered any more about what that gooey stuff is. what I will try to do is see, there's 2 places that I know of, possibly 3 places that would have a microscope. It's just that one of them would be really awkward to be like, hey, can I use your microscope? And then the other one, yeah, I don't know. So if I don't have any better images of this, that means that I wasn't able to get a better microscope, but yeah, I don't really have any more answers as to what the hell that is. It's just gross. Okay, so I did say that that was all of the black stuff, but I just found another little piece of it. If the camera will focus. There, so that's a tiny piece of the black stuff. No idea what that is. This is on a napkin, by the way. This is just a microscope view of a napkin. This is what the napkin looks like normally. There is that little piece. So, yeah, I have no idea, but we will figure that out, I guess.
Shortly after I found the Keystone, I developed Raynaud's syndrome. This disease is common but usually idiopathic, meaning that the actual underlying cause of the disease is unknown. Symptoms include sensitivity to cold, paresthesia, and random cyanosis and paleness of extremities. For me, I almost never get the full-blown vasospasms that are so easy to identify, but I very frequently get severe discomfort and tingling when in a cold environment. I found the Keystone on August 12th of 2012. I most likely started using it regularly in September. Fall months are coincidentally when Raynaud's symptoms begin to worsen, so it's entirely possible I coincidentally developed the syndrome during this time and attributed the tingling and numbness I started developing to the Keystone, as I didn't know about this condition until more recently. Additionally, the stone might conduct heat differently than other materials, hence it feeling cool to the touch, which could have potentially triggered or exacerbated symptoms. I'm not really trying to prove or disprove any of the more supernatural theories proposed for the Keystone, but I do think it's important to consider different possibilities. One of the unexpected things to come out of all of this is that I showed and/or talked about this video to several mental health professionals, and the general consensus was that I was neurodivergent rather than insane. The exact opinions I got varied, but from our discussions as well as from some of the comments I've read, autism seems to be the only mental status really relevant here. Most of the weird things that happened during this time period I cut out of the original video because quite a few of these mysteries I ended up solving on my own. The majority of odd things I've forgotten, though there is one that I think does a good job illustrating both the pattern recognition of autism and the difference between being wrong and being delusional. One day I was walking down the street I lived on when I noticed a series of stains on the road. Each stain was the same shape and the same distance apart, resembling tracks left by an animal. But these tracks didn't look like any animal I knew. They were too large to be a coyote, too small to be a bear, too fat to be a raccoon. The shape of the stains also looked like malformed paw prints, as if whatever creature had left them was injured or deformed. My imagination came up with an idea of what this animal might look like. I went along with the idea that my neighborhood had some sort of local cryptid for a while before I noticed a smashed avocado in the middle of the street that left a stain suspiciously similar to the other paw print-like stains. Then I saw the tires on my neighbor's pickup truck. I do think a big part of this is from autism picking up on details and patterns that the average person doesn't notice, but I don't think that's the only thing going on here. When I was doing my research for the first video, there were a few things I noticed that I initially chalked up as not being important to the overall mystery. I was wrong. I had skipped over a few of my journals from back then, some of them I just hadn't bothered to read, and others I chalked up to being incomprehensible ramblings. Turns out I figured out what this is. This set of nonsense is actually my notes attempting to decode some of the text in Gravity Falls. Not a cryptogram, this was Ford's shitty-ass handwriting. I apparently was able to read at least some of what was written in screenshots of Journal 3. I'm not going to bother trying to decode any of this now, but I will tell you that the text between Dipper's copy and the merchandise copy of Journal 3 had some changes. You guys have fun reading this PhD level handwriting. Here's where the theory comes in. Now, the theory is that my dreams had predicted so much of the plot of Gravity Falls because I stared at screenshots of the show long enough to read this shitty handwriting in Journal 3 subconsciously. My brain figured out in early 2013 that Bill had gotten someone to create and use a portal because Gravity Falls was located on a thin spot between dimensions, and Bill tried to convince said person to use the portal to bridge between dimensions, and that said person went insane and would be a new character in season 2. With hindsight, most people now would connect the dots as this new character and the author being one and the same, which of course is what happened in canon. However, during this period in Gravity Falls series, a saboteur was afoot. A saboteur by the name of Alex Hirsch. For those of you not familiar with the McGucket hoax, I recommend this video to catch you up. Because of this hoax image, the implication was that the author was already an introduced character. Therefore, the author wouldn't be a new character in season 2. Even though I'd figured out all these details about the show, because of the hoax image, my subconscious couldn't figure out whether Ford existed or not, so it just went ahead and put me in his place instead. My subconscious was leaking plot details of Gravity Falls by having me watch things from Ford's perspective. So, when these things started becoming canon, this was pretty much my immediate reaction.
Oh my god! Okay, it's happening! Everybody stay calm!
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm!
Watching Dreamscapers was kind of when things first hit me. That if the stuff that appeared to be happening was actually happening, I was screwed. This video is sponsored by Pit Cola. I know what you guys are thinking, but Pit Cola doesn't exist in this universe. And I say, make your own. I'm here to pass my lucid dream knowledge down to you and teach you how to make authentic tasting Pit Cola. Now, the original recipe for Pit Cola included a full peach pit, which, despite the marketing, does not do anything to affect the flavor and is really just a choking hazard. Here's all you need to make Pit Cola at home. Writing this video and I'm realizing just how many tangents I could go off on for content, like this journal entry alone. What do you mean my lucid dream self was beefing with Dipper? What happened? I also kind of just ignored my old fanfics for the first video since they weren't relevant to the lucid dreams. But I remembered I had 2 government agents looking for time-space anomalies in one of my fics. Seems a little similar to the ones that were in the actual show. You guys posted a lot of theories in the comment section and in messages to me. One of these stood out. Precognition. I know, hear me out. First of all, we're dealing with a weird situation, and even the most plausible of theories here seem absurd. But precognitive dreams are real, and I do get them a lot. I get that there's not a large amount of scientific evidence that they're anything other than coincidence, and if I spent this video listing off every precognitive dream I've ever had, we'd be here for a while. Again, it's also pretty difficult to prove that someone had a dream about something, and the only precognitive dream I actually have any proof about is about a Cookie Run BTS concert of all things. One of the real challenges with trying to pinpoint a cause on things like this is how difficult it is to prove anything outside of shrugging it off as a coincidence. I could tell you that the other night I had a dream about an alien that could turn into a remote-controlled drone, but I have no way to actually show that. Surprisingly, there is still some emergent science that seems to imply a possibility of true precognition. I'm obviously not qualified to explain neuroscience or quantum mechanics, so I'm just interpreting this as best as I can, but I stumbled on this scientific paper that suggested a mechanism by which free will, and by extension, cognitive time travel, apparently, could be possible. I want to emphasize again that this is not confirmed science, and similar propositions have led to a lot of scientific debate. We still don't have a solid understanding of how our own consciousness works. The article is basically suggesting that microtubule structures within neurosynaptic structures could be sending and computing quantum signals, possibly allowing for these signals to ignore the informational laws of locality and transfer thoughts a small distance back in time. Theoretically, a misfire could send this information even further back in time. Pretty much everyone I've mentioned this to immediately considered the same thing. Deja vu. This could also offer a reason as to why deja vu is more common in people with epilepsy, as the disordered brain activity could be causing errors in these signal transfers, possibly sending information farther back than intended. Again, this is a theory. I'm not saying I think this is what has happened, just an idea. So to wrap this up, I think we can cross these theories off our list. I know that some of the theories we have left are still a bit absurd. It's just that most of these are kind of hard to fully prove or disprove in any genuine scientific way. I really don't know enough about how tulpas work to talk about that here, and if we go ahead and cross out the ones that I really don't think are the case, this is what we're left with. Cognitohazard or prophetic dreams. We already talked about precognition, which, while I do think it's a plausibility, isn't something we can effectively test. But the idea of Bill Cipher being a cognitohazard is interesting because, well, it's basically canon. Bill is, to put it simply, a sentient idea. Just like a virus, he needs a host to spread information, to draw windows into reality, to be inspired by this parasitic muse. He is trapped in the mindscape in our reality just as much as he is in the canon of the show. His realness in our reality is simply an extension of his inherent lack of it. He is a mimetic virus. He is only as powerful as we allow him to be, and he simply cannot achieve what he does in the show in our reality because he is, canonically, just an idea. He cannot bridge the divide between mind and reality. There is no portal here for him to use. He is stuck. Forever. I'm not exactly sure how to conclude this. There's still a ton of things I didn't talk about, and a ton of loose ends that didn't really get solved. I guess all I can really say is, I don't know. I thought it would be easier to come up with a definitive conclusion, but whether things are mysterious or just complicated is a bit hard to conclude. I guess that leaves things open-ended for you guys again. Let me know what other theories you have, questions you want to ask, things you'd like me to elaborate or expand on. At this point, I probably will make a hopefully shorter part 3.
Cipher is real, he's sinful and yellow. He's a triangle fella with mischief in mind. Cipher is real, he'll cause weird Mageddon. So don't be forgetting to leave him behind.